To understand how Rising Weekend really impacted our family, first you have to know a little bit of our backstory. For us, moving to Georgia was sort of like hitting a reset button. You know, the military, we've moved many times before, and it's become kind of a routine. But the season of life that we came out of was incredibly stressful. We've dealt with deployments and we've dealt with me being away for months at a time, but there was nothing quite like the stress that recruiting duty had on us. So when we packed up and moved in May from upstate New York to Georgia, it was really coming out of this very stressful season of our life. And, you know, all along though, we knew that God was protecting us and protecting our family. And we knew that we could be, you know, looking forward to what was coming next.
When we started going to Rising, we were desperate for connection. We had just come from 3 years of spiritual desolation. We had no church, we had no Christian friends really, other than my mom, and she lived 2 hours away. Our kids weren't getting any biblical teaching other than what we were teaching them at home.
But coming out of that season, we knew that the biggest priority for us as we were moving here was to really find a church and get connected as soon as possible. So, you know, we started that whole church dating thing, and you know, Rising was actually the first church that we went to, and immediately we knew that it was an answer to prayer, and we knew this is where we needed to be.
After attending Rising for a few weeks, I started hearing about Rising Weekends. And at first, I just assumed it was for people who had been going for a while. I didn't think it really pertained to us. But then our kids heard about it in Sunday school classes and asked us if we could go. So I looked up what and where Carolina Point was, and it was gorgeous. And I was like, I kind of like this idea. And then it was thanks to a couple moms who had just warmly and kindly welcomed me to Rising. They really encouraged us to consider going to it. And I started to think, I'm like, this might be really what we need as a family.
Rising Weekend was really a welcome idea because coming from a season where I was gone before the kids ever woke up and oftentimes came home long after they were in bed, this weekend really proved to be the opposite of that. It was a time for us to reconnect as a family, to unplug from the day-to-day life and really just get to focus on God's plan for us and to really get connected with other families and with each other again.
I approached the decision to go very practically at first. Could we afford it? Would Brian be traveling? Would we even know what his travel schedule was for work? We had 2 dogs. What are we going to do with 2 dogs while we're away in a place where we know nobody? But then the kids started asking us more and more questions and giving us very specific names of other families that were going. And I realized it didn't matter how we got there. We had to go. So our kids really needed to make connections. Not just any connections, Christian connections. They were taking this move really hard. New York was really the first time they remembered moving. They remembered our house and they really missed it. They had great friends and neighbors that they really missed. A lot of our family was there and we had to say goodbye to them. And it was just a really tough adjustment for them, this move. And Brian and I had been desperately praying for a way to show them that Georgia and Rising Church, these were all really good things for us from this point forward. Rising Weekend seemed to be our answer. We could get away, we could bond as a family, and it was a great opportunity to meet the people at Rising on a more deeper connection. My goal for the weekend, because that's what I do, I make plans, my goal for the weekend was to get to know as many people as possible and to get to know their names, their faces, their kids and their names and faces, hopefully find a couple babysitters. I'm a natural extrovert, so making friends and connections is just something that I really thrive on. I knew that if we were going to get through these next 3 years away from family and anything familiar, I needed a village and our kids needed friends. As a military family, I got used to being the new family. I got used to having to really put ourselves out there to make friends and connections, and putting in the effort wasn't something I was afraid to do. So our kids aren't shy either, so they'll just jump in head first and make any kind of connection they can with anybody, adult or child. From the moment we pulled up to the gate at Carolina Point, and Phyllis greeted us with her huge smile and hugs through the window. she just had this genuine gratefulness that we were there. And I realized that all of my thoughts and plans for that weekend were not what God intended for us to get out of this. I made a decision. I'm just gonna let go, and I'm gonna let God. We kept prepping the kids not to assume anything. We had no idea what to expect, and we would just try to have to figure it all out together. And from the moment we walked into the room and the kids found their goodie bags, all these little details that everyone remembered to do for these families was amazing. We just kept looking at each other like, this is so cool. Like, this is amazing.
You know, everywhere we returned, we really saw the care that the team put into making sure that Rising Weekend was just focused on family, focused on that fellowship, and focused on fun. And it was just remarkable to see everything that, like I said, that the team had done. So just seeing how excited our kids were to be there was such a blessing too. Carolina Point was an opportunity for them to just interact, let loose, have fun with others. They were just getting ready to know all the other children at the church. And, you know, it was just a time that took the pressure off Becky and I to plan that fun. You know, sometimes where you have to set up play dates or drive someplace. This was just a place where we could let them go, not even really have to worry about who they were playing with or even where they were necessarily. We were just comfortable letting them go explore, be a little bit wild, and it was also an opportunity for us to say yes when sometimes we'd often say no. Can I have a piece of candy, or can I go run off and be out of your sight? And so for us, that was just a lot of fun to be able to see them in that environment and be so just joyful. You know, some of the moments that stuck out to me, one of them in particular was we were getting all ready on Saturday to go to the pool. So we all got ready. Noah got ready first, and he takes off ahead of us. And we finally get out there and we catch up, and we get to the pool and we look around, and Noah's nowhere to be found. Where is he? And, you know, we're looking around, and all of a sudden I see this little figure out in the lake. Noah had run all the way around to the sawmill side, grabbed a life jacket, and jumped on a paddleboard. This 7-year-old kid with no inhibitions, he just jumped out there, and I see him paddling, and he looks up and he starts waving and smiling with this big old grin on his face. And it was just, that moment to me sticks out so much, just to watch his pure joy and his happiness to be out there and just being a boy, being a kid, not being distracted by anything was just a real blessing for me. Of course, we loved the go-karts. We all got a chance to go on those, and you know, and getting to watch Abigail face her fears, you know, with the swimming pool and going off the diving board. And once she went down once, then she just kept on going around and around again. So seeing the growth even on those sides it was a lot of fun. You know, and then all three of them just being completely uninhibited when it came to worship time, going down front to spend time with their friends, and you know, clinging to us for a little bit, but then running down front and just, you know, raising their hands and dancing. Just watching that was pretty special. We never saw them at meals. You know, they wanted to go and meet with their new friends, and so they would just take off. But that was also, you know, a good time for Becky and I to get to know others too. And then not having the daily distractions allowed us to just reconnect as a family, to not have an excuse in a way. I know that may not sound right, but not have an excuse to say no, you know, just to go grab a frisbee, go grab a kid, go for a walk, go play and have fun, you know. And that was a really important time for our family to really reconnect.
The love and intentional pouring in of our children that Kelly and her volunteers were doing at Rising Weekend was so beyond what we had ever expected. If nothing else, Rising Weekend, more than friendships, had shown us that this is where we want, Rising Church is where we want our kids to be shown the love of Christ, to be taught that there is a world bigger than themselves, and then to be equipped to go out and share the love of Christ with that world. That's something that we'd been praying for our kids for a very long time. Brian and I were able to meet so many new people, and then over and over again, God kept showing me that my idea of what and who our family needed was not even close to what He had planned for us, for the purpose that He had for us in Georgia.
Carolina Point was just a great time for Becky and I to just get to know other families, whether it was just sitting on the front porch of the lodge or having a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. It was really a great time for us to fellowship and get to know others at the church. Chuck's message was such a blessing to really re-emphasize the fact that we have a God who we can call Daddy, and that there's a prayer that we can pattern our prayers after. That really has affected my day-to-day walk with Christ. Just to be able to think about how to out loud remind myself of all of the things that God has done for us. It serves as a great daily reminder that no matter what season in life we're in, we can call out to God. We can praise God even in those dark times. I know that our time in New York is probably not the last time that our family is going to have to face difficulty. But Rising Weekend really did serve as our rainbow to our flood. That no matter what season we're in, we have a God that wants us to praise Him, call out to Him, cry out to Him, and just cling to Him, even in those dark times. Rising Weekend was just a great reminder, just to let loose, to have a good time, to be with family, and how critical that really is another thing that I'll always take away with me.
We moved here in May, but it wasn't until we got back from Rising Weekend that I realized this is where we could settle down. Rising Weekend not only confirmed that God had answered our prayers for a wonderful church and a loving church family, but it showed us that we were able to reconnect as a family that I don't even think we realized we needed. I went from having this perfect plan and goals that this weekend would set us up for the next 3 years with friendships and connections. But when I came home, when I left, I realized that God had set us up for far richer plans. Rising Church was going to feel like home, and these people were going to feel like family.